Welcome to Grapplefuck Fight Picks. Here we go. I'm doing this without Wally today. Wally's busy helping his uncle, apparently. God knows what he's really up to, but there you go. So today we're exploring Andrei Arlovski versus Tanner Boser, UFC Fight Night, this Saturday in Vegas, I believe. A three-round fight. Two heavyweights. Now this is an interesting fight stylistically, and I'll explain why in a minute. First, let's look at the how they match up in terms of stats. Andrei Arlovski, a very seasoned veteran, if you can call him a veteran. He's 29 and 19. That's a very, very bad record. He spent a lot of time in the UFC, but he still wins fights. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, 77-inch reach, 44-inch leg reach. Tanner Boser, 6'2", weighed in at 265 pounds apparently in his last fight. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think he's that big. Reach of 75.5 inches, leg reach 43 inches. So the reach advantage goes to Arlovski. The weight advantage officially goes to Tanner Boser, but I think they're probably very similar in weight. Yeah, Tanner Boser is 19 and 6, which is a decent record. Arlovski wins mostly by KO, although that's probably not a recent thing. 11% submission, 29% decision. Tanner Boser wins half of his fights by TKO or KO, 11% submission, and 39% decision. Okay. Now, the important thing here is striking differential. Andrei Arlovski has basically an even striking differential. It's not good, it's not bad. It is what it is. You want to see a positive striking differential. Tanner Boser, it doesn't show on the UFC page there, but as we can see here, Tanner Boser has got a positive striking differential of 4.54 to 2.85. That's a good striking differential. Okay, so I'm interested in Tanner Boser. Now, I just gave the weight for Tanner Boser at 265. I think that's incorrect. At other times, the UFC has him listed as 255. I think he's smaller, and he's interesting. Whether he's smaller or not, just hear me out here. He moves like a smaller fighter. He's very agile. He's got a lot of footwork. He's either all the way out or all the way in, meaning that he darts in and out of range, and he darts in and out of range very quickly. He'll jump in with a jab or a right hook, then jump back out again. He'll come in, throw a leg kick, then jump back out again. He's very elusive. He's very evasive, which is why he's got that positive striking differential. He lands quite a lot of shots, and he doesn't get hit. And all of that is a function of his speed. For a heavyweight guy, he's quick. I'm not saying he's the quickest, but he is quick. And this is particularly interesting for me because I've long been an advocate of slightly smaller, even though he's technically officially not smaller in terms of weight, even though he looks smaller. I've long been an advocate of the smaller, lighter, faster guys who, instead of just relying on power, which is what heavyweight UFC fighters do, they just stand and bang, and hopefully their opponent will just fall down. Instead of doing that, use speed, agility, movement, in and out, land punches, and you either overwhelm them, and they open up for the combinations which can put them away, or you win by decision on points. That's a great tactic for heavyweights. A faster, smaller heavyweight can do very, very well against these larger, slower heavyweights. And I think that's what we're seeing with Tanner Boser. Now, this is also interesting because this is something that Andrei Arlovski figured out, I think, back in 2017. Because there's a certain point, I think it was after Andrei Arlovski lost 5 fights in a row, 4 of which he got finished in by KO and TKO. There's a point at which he changed his style from the stand and bang style to the more elusive. Stay on the outside, pop the jab, throw the kicks, try and rack up some volume, keep moving, be elusive, and just outwork your opponent. Now, Andrei Arlovski has done this with middling success since he adopted that strategy. He's kind of maybe a 50-50 fighter since he's been doing that. Probably lost slightly more than he's won. But to be fair to him, it's extended his career. Now, he's pretty old at this point. So to be fair to him, it is kind of working. Just pop the jab, stay on the outside, don't get hit. And some of those fights you're going to win by decision. You know? Now, both fighters have got this kind of game plan, which makes this matchup really interesting. And we'll talk about how they're going to collide. Well, when the two game plans are so similar, how they'll collide later. But yeah, let's talk about Tanner Boser's advantages. As I said, it's a speed thing. He comes in and out of distance very quickly. He tends to come in with a jab. He'll often come in with a looping right hook, which is very powerful, and he's knocked people out with that, or at least it's set up. It's been a prelude to knocking people out. So it can get people off balance. It can rock them a little bit. I think he set up the finish against Felipe Lin's doing that, and it's very powerful. The problem is with that, when you're covering distance, if you're all the way on the outside and you're coming in covering distance with that big looping right hook, your whole, all of this is exposed. So when I was researching this fight, looking at Tanner Boser doing this, coming in with a big looping right hook, I thought at some point somebody's going to make him pay for that. Then I watched this fight against Cyril Gane, and Cyril Gane made him pay for that very, very badly. So Cyril Gane, unfortunately for Tanner Boser, is just that little bit quicker and probably that little bit more powerful. And every time Tanner Boser was coming in, closing that distance, whether it was a jab or that right hook, Cyril Gane was countering with a jab, countering with the right cross, or even with a combination, right? And that completely shut down Tanner Boser's game. You know, the problem with Tanner Boser's game, and indeed Andrei Arlovski's game, but more so with Tanner Boser, if you're coming in and covering that distance, you've got to be so quick. You've got to be so quick. So it's by no means the perfect game plan. But the question is, can that work against Andrei Arlovski? I would imagine Tanner Boser is a little bit quicker than Andrei Arlovski. That's kind of backed up by the fact his striking differential is better, so he lands more and gets hits less than Andrei Arlovski does. But we'll never know. We won't know until the fight happens. Because it's very easy to look at a fighter in one fight and say, oh yeah, that guy's quick. Then you see him against another fighter, and turns out he's not necessarily that quick at all. So it'll be interesting to see who's quicker, but I'm fairly confident Tanner Boser, being the younger man, is probably the quicker fighter. So, yeah, this fight is going to stay standing for sure. Andrei Arlovski doesn't like taking it to the ground. Tanner Boser, to my knowledge, doesn't like taking it to the ground. So this is going to stay standing. We know what Tanner Boser's game plan is going to be, all the way in or all the way out. You know, he's going to throw those single shots. We're not going to see many combinations from him. He's basically going to try and land as many shots until he kind of rocks you with that big right hand. Then he'll try and finish you. Andrei Arlovski is going to stay on the outside, not all the way out like a Tanner Boser, but he'll stay on the outside, pump the jab, throw some leg kicks, and try and score points. Andrei Arlovski is trying to win on points every single fight now. That's his game plan. But the difference between Tanner Boser and Andrei Arlovski is that Andrei Arlovski, yes, he'll stay on the outside, he'll pump the jab, he'll throw the kicks on the outside. There are also moments where he will come forward and he will exchange in the pocket. He will let those fists fly. At this point in his career, that's probably not the best thing for him to be doing. It's as if somehow, you know, he maybe forgets his game plan and just kind of comes forward and just bangs, right? That's probably not the best thing for him to be doing, particularly against Tanner Boser. So I think in the pocket, I think Tanner Boser, as we said, is probably a little bit quicker. He's more powerful. And I just worry if Andrei Arlovski, if he's going to stand in the middle with Tanner Boser. So if that happens, I think Tanner Boser is probably going to knock him out. If this stays at range, and both of them are trying to fight from the outside and trying to jump in with, you know, single shots, I don't quite know how that's gonna go. I suspect Tanner Boser will win the outside game simply because he's quicker. But this is very difficult to say. The good thing about Tanner Boser is that he does land a lot, even though he throws only single shots. He does tend to land a fair amount throughout the course of the fight. Plus, he has the ability to knock people out. So he's got two avenues for victory there on the feet: decision or KO. Andrei Arlovski at this point only has the ability to win by decision. So, in my mind, either Tanner Boser wins by KO or decision, or Andrei Arlovski wins by decision. So if it comes to decision, this comes down to who is throwing the most, who is throwing the most volume. That's actually a tricky one to say. So if you look at their previous fights, it's not immediately apparent who's going to throw the most volume. So Tanner Boser against Rafael Pessoa threw 43-12, and that was in 2.5 rounds. That's a decent amount of Tanner Boser. Outstruck Rafael Pessoa enormously. I mean, as he should, because Rafael Pessoa was basically immobile and obese. So take that with a pinch of salt. Against Felipe Lins, that fight was really too short to really rack up any volume. Against against Cyril Gane, he was outstruck by a factor of 2. Right, so there's a mixed bag here. And of course, the fight before that, he outstruck Daniel Spitz by a factor of 3. Right, so in some fights he's had relatively low striking output. In other fights he's had very high. Against particularly that fight against Daniel Spitz, where he landed 93 strikes in 3 rounds. That's a lot. That is a lot. Okay, so we know that Tanner Boser has the ability to throw a lot of volume. Great. We also know that Andrei Arlovski has the ability to throw a lot of volume, but again, it's not consistent. So, for example, against Felipe Lins, he outstruck him 50-41. Okay, good. Against Ben Rothwell, now this is where it gets interesting. Against Ben Rothwell, in a 3-round fight, landed 152 strikes to Ben Rothwell's 70. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So that's the exact kind of thing that Andrei Arlovski is trying to do every single fight. And against that fight, in that fight against Ben Rothwell, it worked perfectly, absolutely perfectly. And if he does that against Tanner Boser, he'll win. He will win. In his other fights against Augusto Sakai, he outstruck him by 75-42. He actually lost that fight. That was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. Walt Harris, 44-24. So he's outstriking Walt Harris. That's a big deal. Then against Shamil Abdurakhimov, he was outstruck by him there. And then against Taito Avas, it was pretty much even. So there's a mixed bag here. It's not as if we can say for one fighter or the other that they're going to win on strikes. So the decision, if it goes to decision, I feel like this could go either way. So this kind of makes this a slightly tricky one to predict. But bearing in mind that I think Tanner Boser is slightly quicker, I think he's more powerful. He's got a couple of different ways to win on the feet. He's the younger man, and statistically, the younger man is likely to win. If there's an age gap of 5 years or more, the younger man is overwhelmingly likely to win. There's a real statistical edge there. So that's significant. Andrei Arlovski does have the height and reach advantage, but I think Tanner Boser is going to win this. The question is, do we put this in the safe come or the risky come? I've not decided yet. The odds would imply. Let's just look at the odds quickly. So the odds for Tanner Boser winning are -275. Those are the kind of odds for a safe bet. I'm not sure if it's necessarily that safe a bet, but there we go. And Andrei Arlovski is a +200 underdog. I quite like those odds for Andrei Arlovski, I must say, even if I don't think he's going to win. One thing that did grab my attention was the odds for an Arlovski decision win. So the odds for an Arlovski decision win are +450. So you're getting 4.5 times your money back for an Arlovski decision. I quite like those odds. So what I'm thinking of doing is putting Tanner Boser in the risky come or the safe come. Not quite sure yet, but hedging that with a small bet for an Arlovski decision win. So yeah, this is an interesting one. Just the matchup of styles. It's just very interesting. I think this is a test for Tanner Boser. I mean, it's difficult to call Andrei Arlovski a gatekeeper at this point. He's probably slightly worse than a gatekeeper. But you kind of need to beat Andrei Arlovski if you want to be considered to be a reasonable heavyweight fighter at any level. You have to beat him. So I'm curious how this is going to go. I want Arlovski to win, just I think he's the nicer guy. But I think Tanner Boser is a very nice guy, to be honest. I followed him on Twitter. He seems like kind of a douchebag. So I want Arlovski to win. But I suspect Tanner Boser will win this, especially when you consider I mean, we've already mentioned, okay, he's faster, he's more powerful. He can win by points, potentially. He can also win by knockout. He's the younger man. Andrei Arlovski also, he's been knocked out a lot. He's been knocked out a lot. So Arlovski could get knocked out here. Again, I mean, his chin is cracked. So, yeah, I'm going to go Tanner Boser here. So, official prediction, I'm going to say Tanner Boser. Probably, oh, this is a tricky one. Picking the round is a tricky one. Tanner Boser, probably round one. Tanner Boser, round one. And I think Andrei Arlovski, yeah, we talked about his game plan staying on the outside. But again, he does come into the center of the octagon. He will trade with you. He will stand and bang. And I think Tanner Boser will make him pay for that. Not necessarily because Tanner Boser is the best fighter, but he's got the speed, he's got the power, and he does cover distance pretty quickly. So I'm going to say Tanner Boser, KO or TKO, round two. And I'm going to put him in the probably the safe come at, what did we say? Minus 275. Okay, so that's all we've got. I'll be back tomorrow with Waleed, doing another fight pick for you. See you then. Bye.